Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Trend Watch from CompTIA Research, where we give you a little bit of this and a little bit of that coming out of the world of technology. I'm Seth Robinson, and today we're going to be talking about cloud computing. When we talk about modern IT, we talk a lot about how it's become more strategic and some of the things that companies are doing differently because IT has changed, especially in the past decade. And one of the biggest changes that's happened is that companies have built out an infrastructure, they've built a foundation of computing, and they're building more and more complex applications and solutions on top of that infrastructure. In the past, companies put a lot of energy into building that infrastructure, and the applications were relatively simple. But now that's changed a lot, and there's more energy going into the building of applications. There's more parts of the applications and the solutions that are being built, and so there's a lot more complexity going on there. In order to achieve that complexity in these solutions, companies really need to rely on a foundation that includes cloud computing. And most companies have moved in that direction. But because cloud computing is such a major shift in the way that companies are doing their infrastructure, there's going to be a long period here where companies are maturing in their adoption, they're learning new things, they're exploring new models. And so that's why for this coming year, we still think there will be a lot of focus on cloud computing and some of the newer trends, even though companies have been adopting cloud computing for quite some time now. So when we think about the three major trends that we think will occur within cloud computing in 2024, the first one is multi-cloud computing. And actually, none of these trends are going to sound brand new. A lot of these topics we've been talking about for a long time, but for each of these trends, we're going to see companies moving to a new stage of adoption, a new stage of maturity. With multi-cloud computing, we're talking about using multiple different models to build out your infrastructure, whether you're using on-prem systems or on-prem cloud, like a private cloud installation, or you're using public cloud providers, and maybe you're using multiple public cloud providers to get the best performance or the best cost for the applications that you're putting with those cloud providers. So all of this leads to a system where your architecture is broken into multiple different components. And it becomes a pretty big challenge to manage all of those components. And we're seeing companies continue to wrap their arms around what it means to do that management. There's a technical aspect to it, just getting all of the pieces to work together. And so we're seeing companies continue to play around with, again, which system is going to fit the application the best, and then integrating that all together. And then there's a big financial component too. And so we talk a lot about FinOps or financial operations, where system administrators and cloud engineers are really having to fine tune their usage of these cloud models in order to get the best financial return for the compute and the storage and the different things that they're getting out of their cloud systems. So this adoption and maturity and refining of multi-cloud computing will be something that takes place quite a bit throughout this year. The second trend that we expect to see is around edge computing. Again, not a new concept, something that we've been talking about for a little while, but this is the idea that you might have a central location of cloud computing where you're holding a lot of data or where you're doing some calculations that don't need to be in real time. But then you've got things out at the device level or out on the edge where the activity is happening, and you're doing some compute out there. Maybe you're storing a small amount of data out there, and you're trying to reduce latency, you're trying to improve performance by doing this compute as close to the place where it needs to happen as possible. And what this really means is that companies are going to be having to change the way that their applications run. So it means one thing if you've got an application completely running in a cloud provider. It means one thing if you've got an application completely running on an edge device. But to have applications that can intelligently move back and forth between the two based on the needs of the user or based on the available bandwidth or based on whatever it might be, that requires quite a bit of change in the application itself. So as companies are moving more towards software development in order to customize what they're doing within the company, this notion of edge computing and leveraging a back-end cloud system with a front-end edge device is going to be something that they're exploring quite a bit throughout 2024. The final trend really ties back into the last two. And again, it's not so much a new trend, but it's around cloud security and privacy. So because these things are changing, that means that the attack surface and the possible vulnerabilities are also changing. When we first started talking about cloud computing, we talked a lot about how companies needed to learn exactly what their providers were giving them in terms of security and what pieces they needed to add on themselves. And this move to cloud computing was one of the biggest things that really tore down the notion of a secure perimeter that companies might have been using or might have been building using firewalls or other equipment within their own offices. Once you move to a cloud center, that data is outside your office walls, and you start to have different behavior and different techniques that you have to use as you're trying to secure your data or your applications within a cloud provider. We've also talked before in our most recent state of cybersecurity research about risk management being the thing that's going to drive security. And with this move to multi-cloud computing, with the changes that are taking place there, with the changes that are taking place at the application layer as companies explore edge computing, there are a lot of new risks that are being introduced. And so companies need to get really good at evaluating those risks, understanding what they are, and then taking the right steps in order to mitigate the risk. And that doesn't always mean perfect security on every component of your IT architecture, but it means making the right decision based on the needs of the business and based on the priority of the applications and the data. So as companies are going through the first couple of changes with cloud computing and learning more, they're also going to have to be addressing some of the security and privacy risks that get opened up. So that's a quick look at what cloud computing is going to look like in 2024 as companies begin pursuing these more advanced solutions. And we hope that you will join us next time for another look at something new on the next episode of TrendWatch.